Welcome to the Plant-Centered and Thriving podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Kitchens. Welcome to the show, Plant-Centered listener. My name is Ashley, and I am your host today. And today I have two special guests with me that come with a very special story. So picture this. Imagine back in 2016, you're renting out a kitchen once a week to make bread for your friends. And then that demand grows so strong, you not only outgrow the equipment in this kitchen, but you also end up opening a 100% plant-based organic sourdough bread shop. And this bread shop blows up. And that's what led to our conversation today. They were approached by Penguin to create a cookbook, and the rest is history. This story is so cool to see how when you are passionate about something in your life, how it beautifully comes into fruition. And that is the story that I have today for you with Natasha and Ed. So please join me in welcoming them to the show and sit back and listen to their wonderful story. Ed and Natasha, welcome to the show. I'm so thrilled to have you here and talk about your new cookbook.
Thanks for having us, Ashley.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would like to actually start, before we get into the origin story of the cookbook, which I cannot wait to hear more about, I would love to actually learn about both of y'all's journey when it came to, coming over to British Columbia, starting your business, going vegan, all of those great things. I know I've done my own research, but I want to kind of hear it from you and how things have gone for you leading up to this cookbook, especially.
Yeah, we didn't really know too much about Whistler when we first arrived. We came to snowboard. The plan was to come for 6 months and then move to the East Coast to Montreal for 6 months, just take sort of a year out of sort of, our professional careers, even though we both came to Whistler and Natasha was teaching and I was cooking. It was never meant to be a 10-year sort of plus, go for citizenship and everything like that. But yeah, instantly fell in love with the town. And do you want to take over from there?
Yeah, so as Ed said, we were kind of here for 6 months, but very quickly we assimilated into the local community, and I was doing volunteer work, and we started doing yoga and met loads of other different types of people, like all ages. We knew like seniors, families, young professionals, all the seasonal workers, and Ed started making bread for the local community as a kind of side hustle at a similar time to me transitioning to veganism. I'd been vegetarian for most of my life and then actually landed a job randomly in the ski school when I first arrived. Having had a career as a teacher for 15 years, I had some industry issues, shall we say, with my teaching career, and felt quite burnt out by what had happened. And so I decided I wanted a break and I wanted to go to a ski resort and just have a ski bum life for 6 months and sort of recalibrate what I wanted to do with my life. And during this time, I ended up cooking for 800 ski instructors and kids. And the quality of food at these ski lodges for the ski school programs is not great. I mean, they're there to ski. They're not there to eat good, healthy food, really. So we're talking like boxes of wieners out of the freezer into the, we didn't have a fryer, but into the oven. And I was just starting to read labels and saw what kind of ingredients were in these products that I had to make. And in the beginning, I created a kind of disconnect that, I wasn't eating it and it was just a job. And so, I'd just get through the season and have a great time. It was all about the snowboarding and, socializing. But by the end of the season, I really didn't like doing this. I didn't like making the food, and I started to learn more about healthy eating and plant-based eating and started to incorporate a lot more plants into my diet and eliminate things like cow's milk and eat. I think in the beginning it was almond milk for me because there weren't so many options available as there are now. This was back in 2013 to 14. And then by the end of the ski season, we were off on farms. We did some placements working on organic farms together. Ed started the sourdough culture. When we got back to Whistler, I worked in an organic vegan juice bar, and my role was a raw vegan chef, and I had to basically do the salad bar and raw desserts. I had no idea about any of that type of food. I just spent the season cooking crappy junk food. And then before that, I'd been a teacher and just had very sporadic hospitality jobs. And so suddenly here I am with this task of running this salad bar, and had started learning about salads, learning about fruit, learning about, spiralizers, dehydrators, all these amazing appliances that we can make healthy, nutritious food with. And then eventually watched some documentaries and made the transition to saying, I'm vegan. Ed, I don't want any animal products in the house. This is how I live now. If you want to live with me, this is how it's going to be. And he was a bit taken aback at first. He was a fine dining chef for 20 years. Had lots of experience with, butchery and that type of cuisine, using every part of the animal and sourcing the best meat you can. But it was very meat heavy. And so, I was very lucky that he got on board with it at home, and then eventually transitioned himself. And it was mainly due to your health issues, I think, that sealed the deal for you, wasn't it, Ed?
Yeah, totally.
Oh.
So, like everyone's aware that, you should cut down dairy. It's not good for, your heart and things like that. So I had a cardiovascular issue since I was a young kid that lent eventually I had a stent fitted when I was 26, which is basically a little spring that they do keyhole surgery, and it goes up in my aorta and it opens the valve to make the blood flow better. So when Natasha started on her vegan journey, it was kind of like we always ate a lot, like a heavy vegetarian diet at home anyway. So it wasn't too much of a shock. It's not like I was eating steak every day at home, even though it was part of my career. I liked eating vegetables and fruits and things like that. So I was working at a farm to table. At the same time, sort of in our private life, we were going vegan. I was starting BReD out of the restaurant I was working at. Like Tash said, we started doing yoga. So I was making loaves of bread on my days off for the local community friends, the yoga studio owner, and gradually word of mouth, people were like, we want to buy this. So we started BReD basically out of the kitchen from the restaurant, one day a week. And it was all just pre-order, done on trust, no pre-sales, just sort of turn up, you pre-ordered, and then do you want one next week? I'll put your name in a little book. And it started at 30 loaves per week, always the same sourdough. And then gradually it grew to 50 to 70. And then within about 6 months, it was at least 150 every week. With the small equipment that we had and the ovens, it was, it was a professional kitchen, but not a professional bakery. So after about 18 months of doing that, the sort of restaurant were like, okay, this is, really gaining momentum now. It's taking more of your time than we thought. We kind of need, you need to be more focused here. So they sort of gave me the ultimatum, shut it down or bring them into it to be a partner sort of thing.
They had a concept of a sandwich shop.
They had a concept that wasn't going to be vegan, but didn't align with our morals. So we were just like, okay, I think this is the push we need to go. And the customers were saying, we want the bread more often. The restaurant was saying, we want you to make a decision. So Natasha and I were lucky enough that we owned a house in the UK at the time. So we sold that. We put 100% of that into it, and then got some extra funds through community lenders and banks, and went all in and opened a sourdough vegan bakery. I don't think the community knew it was going to be vegan. They just wanted the sourdough bread, but we knew that we wanted to open a business that aligned with our beliefs and morals and ethics and all these sorts of things.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, so you come over from the UK expecting to spend about 6 months in the Whistler area, and y'all have been there for how long now?
10 years.
10 years. Wow.
Yeah, just over 10 years we came here. So
we're citizens now. We got our passports and everything. Yeah.
We're Canadians with accents. The bakery's been going for about 5 years. And so, yeah, we've been bakery owners for half of that.
Wow. That's incredible. What are some of kind of your, just so the listener understands what goes into kind of your day-to-day operations? I'm sure maybe every day is different to some extent, but just so that they can understand, and me too, I'm curious what sort of that day-to-day looks like for both of you.
Yeah, so because of my background in kitchens, I've been in kitchens since I was 13. So I've got 25 years of sort of kitchen experience, running kitchens as sous chef, head chef, various sort of managerial roles, but never owned, a business. So that's been a huge learning curve. But generally, I sort of run the back of house and the kitchen, and Natasha runs the front of house, and also takes care of sort of a lot of admin, payroll, and speaking to the bookkeeper and things. So we have to wear many hats. I generally take care of all the social media. I love taking photos and videos. So we have pretty active Instagram page where we share sort of tutorials on what we're making and specials. But yeah, sort of we make, a couple of hundred loaves a day. We make sourdough cinnamon buns. We make cakes and cookies. We have an espresso machine. So we have coffee and a retail section where we sell sort of like local artisan sort of ceramics and jams. And now our cookbook. So yeah, it's quite a small bakery, but it's all open plan. So we love the fact families can come in and see where everything's being produced.
And for you listening, if you go to edsbread.com, that's EDSBRED.com, you will see exactly what Ed is talking about with these incredible loaves of bread that are being created, and also all the treats that you create as well. I mean, there's so much, it seems like, to buy there. I was on the website earlier this morning and I was just drooling over all the options that you have. But I will say one thing that really stood out about what it is that you do in Whistler was you give back a lot to the community as well. And I would love for you to kind of speak on just some things that you do with your business that also contribute to the community and the surrounding areas with everything that you do.
Well, we're actually a B Corp certified business. So B Corp Labs is a third party that have assessed our social and environmental impact from the inside out. They've scrutinized all of our receipts and certificates and payroll and everything that we do. So things that we do that have got us to B Corp certification are sourcing locally. We buy a lot of produce in the summer months from farms that are just 30 minutes drive away. And we source all of our grain from Canada organically. We always source organically and locally as we can. So supporting our local growers, our local economy, our local food producers is the first thing. We also donate 1% of our revenue to animal and environmental causes. So I think we've donated at least $20,000. We've planted 70,000 trees with a partner charity, Trees for the Future, who plant trees in sub-Saharan Africa where the land is very degraded. And we do that. It used to be we planted a tree for every coffee that we sold. But then the price of tree planting has gone up so much that we've had to adjust that slightly. So we plant a tree for every 2 coffees that we sell now. And then we do things like, we just use compostable packaging. We strive for zero food waste, donating any extra loaves to our food bank or local businesses like staff that work in neighboring businesses. Everybody loves us because we feed the community. And then if we've got like treats like cinnamon buns, like the hospital are always appreciative. We have the biggest bike park in the world and huge, I think it might be the biggest ski resort in North America here in Whistler. So you can imagine there's a lot of injuries and broken bones, and the staff are always, kept up x-raying people, tying people up. So it's great for them to get a nice little pick-me-up from their local bakery. And then we just try to look after our staff as much as we can and make sure that they're earning a living wage. Life in a ski resort is very expensive. Things like accommodation are hard to find, and landlords tend to get every dollar they can. And that has an impact on the local businesses because then we have to make sure we're paying our staff enough that they can afford to live here in Whistler. And not just afford to live here, but they want all the gear. They want a new pair of skis. They want to have all the toys to go up and play in the mountains as well. So you have to make sure that you're being flexible with your schedule and then going beyond that, offering your local staff medical and wellness benefits, pension plan, things like that a lot of people in hospitality don't get, or even just giving them the legal amount of breaks, and holidays and not overworking your people. So just trying to be the employer that we never had, really. When we look back at people we worked for and the kind of things that they did, we couldn't imagine our staff even putting up with that. And we certainly try to be the best employers that we can. But that said, it all sounds very idealistic. It's not easy, and it's certainly a struggle. And it's about, understanding that and navigating through that and trying to realize that perfect is the enemy of done. Really, that's been a mantra for a long time for us. And just trying to, one foot in front of the other, do better than you've done before, learn from your mistakes, and always improving on all of these things.
I think that's fantastic. And I think it's something good for all of us to remember. And for you listening, if you're ever in the Vancouver area or in the Whistler area, by all means, you have to check out Ed's BReD. I mean, it just sounds like such an amazing, it's already on my list when I come visit. So I can't wait. Yeah.
It's very unusual to have a vegan business in a ski resort.
Right.
So that's kind of quite unique. But, we never had the idea, let's move to Whistler and open a vegan bakery. Like, that would be a crazy idea. Like, nobody would ever think of doing that. It just all happened quite organically. It's like, you want us to open a bakery? Okay, we'll open a bakery, but we're vegan. So it's going to be vegan.
Yeah, I'm curious. And I think clearly this was meant to happen. I mean, y'all moved there for a reason. This bakery came into fruition for a reason, the cookbook as well. And it sounds like the community was incredibly supportive of your bakery that also happens to be vegan as well.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, for us, it was kind of like with our backgrounds, we've been lucky enough to travel around the world and work in, Australia and New Zealand and take all these sort of influences and incorporate them into our business. And just make products that, are really tasty and delicious to eat, whether you're vegan or not. For us, 90% probably of our customers aren't vegan, don't associate with that, but they're all very happy to have oat milk in their coffee. I have loads of friends that prefer oat milk in their coffee to dairy because you get more flavor from the coffee. It doesn't sort of coat your mouth in this sort of thick, sort of creamy mixture. So, yeah, I think we're always striving to be as best as we can with the products. We're very critical of the products to make sure they don't just taste great, but they look good. And, how will it, how we're going to display it? How long will it keep and things like that? And just giving the customers that knowledge as well, information.
Yeah. I think that's so helpful. And clearly it's been well received in your area as well, which is really fantastic to see. So I want to talk about the cookbook and kind of the origin story of how this happened, the inspiration behind it. What prompted you to create this cookbook?
Well, it was a series of events that sort of snowballed into a book deal. So I think the first thing that happened was COVID. And during the pandemic, so March 20th, we shut down our bakery in 2020. And March 21st, we had launched an online shop and were taking orders for BReD. And we laid off all of our staff, and Ed and I were just running it as a once a week thing. There were no instructions on how to operate during this pandemic. At that point, it was very new. Nobody knew what COVID was. Nobody knew who had it, who didn't have it. Everyone was kind of walking around in fear and also staying at home, as government said. So us launching this online shop was very fast, and other businesses in town and around the world just totally closed for 3 months or so, until they had clearer guidance on how to operate. And because we were a new business, it was our first year, we'd been having month-on-month record sales. So every month it was like, oh my God, it's a record sales month. Oh my God, it's another one. And then it was like, boom, close. And we were like, we just couldn't just do nothing. Like, we were on this momentum of like, keep going. Like, and I remember on the Sunday when we closed that the customers were coming in and they were saying, this business is shut down. The ski resort shut down. Are we going to be able to get BReD? And I was like, oh yeah, we're going to find a way. I was like, stay watching what we're doing on social media. We'll let you know what's happening. We're going to find a way. So we launched this online shop on March 21st. On March 29th, Forbes ran an article about like businesses that had done a quick pivot and picked up that we were operating so quickly, had moved, pivoted was the word. And then the local paper that we have here also picked it up and did a full page spread on us. So we started to get media attention just for the fact that we didn't stop doing business overnight. And then this led to us winning an award here in BC, a small business award for Youth Entrepreneur of the Year. And then we started doing some podcasts and talking about our pivot. Everyone was so interested in this at the time, how we'd managed to, turn our business around so quickly, blah, blah, blah. And then before we knew it, we had Penguin email us and say, we've heard you on some interviews. We've been watching what you're doing for the last few months. Sourdough itself during the pandemic had a massive boom. Like every man and his dog had a sourdough starter.
It's true.
And so our Instagram following had accelerated by about 1,000 followers a day through the months of April and May in 2020. So we just totally doubled again our Instagram following. We started to become like the sourdough doctors. People were like, messaging us and asking, I've been trying to make this bread and this thing's gone wrong. Like, how can you help me? So then we added like a consultation to our website. People were paying like $250 to sit with us for an hour and talk about sourdough and baking. It was crazy. And then Penguin said, would you like to write a cookbook? Now, at this time, it was 2021. We'd won the Small Business Award. We'd reopened our bakery about 4 days a week, but we didn't have our original team. They'd all gone. And because we're in a ski resort, we're really reliant on immigration here, seasonal workers coming and going. And there was no movement. Borders were still pretty much closed for travel, and work permits weren't being issued to foreign workers. And so it was a bit stagnant, the labour force here. The people that were here, they had jobs and they kept them. And there was no new blood coming in, taking the new roles. So Ed was working from 4 a.m. to 7 p.m, doing like two people's shifts, basically, because the demand was there. We still had bills to pay. And we're desperately trying to recruit a team. And then it's like, hey, guy, you're working 18 hours a day. Would you like to write a cookbook? And I was like, oh my God, there's no possible way that we can do this. Like, I don't even know if I can tell it about this email. I think it's just going to be, it might just push him over the edge.
I didn't see it for 2 weeks. She was like, I have to
No
do
way.
my timing. She was like, when am I going to tell him to do it? And I can't remember the exact time, but I'm sure we were sort of at home and a bit more relaxed.
Yes.
And it was an instant yes. It was like, we just have to do it. You can't really turn down. There's so many people that write books and try and pitch it to these publishers. And we didn't do that. I'd have obviously always dreamed of writing a cookbook, but the thought of it definitely at that point was, not the right time.
Ridiculous.
But at the same point, the right time, because I was in the bakery all the time, creating new dishes and wanted to share those recipes. So they pitched the idea to us, a sourdough vegan baking book. They saw a gap in the market. They saw the trend with sourdough, but also not too many sort of vegan plant-based baking books, lots of cooking books, but not so much in that sort of baking realm. Or it was just sort of more simple muffins and cookies and things. So they said 100 recipes. We've got a year to write it, and then it would go through some editing. So 2 recipes per week, to be, tested and everything written out and everything like that on average. So it was full on. We didn't really have a day off for 2.5 years. We shot everything at the bakery, as much natural light as possible, minimal props. We just bought some nice plates and boards and things, and it was just all about the food.
But we had visited California a few times leading up to us opening the bakery and kind of doing a little bit of market research. And there are some phenomenal bakeries down in California like Tartine and The Mill, San Francisco by Josie Baker, and the Lodge BReD down in LA. And we went into these phenomenal bakeries. And what we noticed quite quickly was hardly anything in them was vegan except the bread, really. So we would go into Tartine and there'd be like a case of, I don't know, it felt like 100 pastries. I don't know how many there were, but I remember saying to the guy, like, do you have anything vegan? And the guy was so sweet and he said, oh, I'm so glad you asked. I'm actually vegan as well. But there's only one thing that's vegan and it's this little cake or whatever. I thought, oh, that's really sad. So I started to notice that there was a sort of new wave of vegan restaurants and cafes going on around the world. This was around, I don't know, 2016, 2017, 2018. This sort of influx of vegan, it got really trendy and in the mainstream. But then we just found that sourdough bakeries in particular, because they make this traditional style of bread, they're very old school in their mentality of everything. Everything has to be the way it's always done. Eggs, butter, cream. So we thought, well, why can't you have a sourdough bakery and have it vegan? And when you look at baking books, as Ed said, like there was very little at the time I think it's only in literally the last year that our book and a few other people's books have actually come out related to vegan baking specifically. But especially with the sourdough bakers, that there weren't many. So we thought, yeah, this is a great concept to have a bread book and vegan baking all together.
Yeah, so we wanted to write a book that we wanted. Again, like opening the bakery, it was kind of what we were searching for. Like Natasha said, like we didn't want to scare people off and just do it sourdough. So we have chapters in there. We have a gluten-free chapter, cakes and cookies, scones, things to have with bread. A zero waste chapter, which is quite close to our hearts. So using the sourdough discard for pancakes or waffles, crackers, things like that. So 100 recipes. It's kind of, there's a lot of tips and tricks in there.
There's even a gluten-free chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I know, like you mentioned, Ed, there are a lot of things to do with your leftover sourdough, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like you said, waffles, pancakes.
Yeah.
Crumpets.
And we got crumpets in there.
English muffins.
And then you can even spread it thin, on parchment paper, put some seeds on it and make a nice cracker. Works really nice. Just
Okay.
for the oven. Yeah. So lots of stuff you can do with it. Even we've got like a potato frittata recipe in there, which works really almost like a thick omelette sort of thing.
Yep, nice. And you mentioned things to go with breads. Are those like jams, spreads? Like, what does that kind of look like? Just to give the listener a preview.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so there's hummus, which we make at the bakery, and we sell hummus and olives at the bakery. We started that during the pandemic, sort of more deli items. We have a smoky baba ganoush, like a eggplant dip. There's a really nice beetroot and sunflower seed dip. So yeah, romesco, barbecue romesco is like barbecued red peppers with almonds and garlic, a little bit of chili. So there's some cheeses in there as well, like a ricotta and a feta cheese. And then you can use that feta cheese to put into some savory scones.
Baked beans, British style baked beans.
Yes.
Ooh, yes.
So it's kind of like we've taken influences from our travels, from our heritage of being English, and then some North American classics like pecan pie, the cinnamon buns, sticky buns. So there's a real collection. There's not just loaves, there's small breads like pita bread, burger buns.
Donuts.
So it's a real sort of book
Nice.
that you can sort of, keep coming back to. There's a celebration chapter for like cakes, birthday cakes, mince pies for Christmas.
So this book is something to use all year round for breakfast, lunch, dinner, celebrations. We wanted this to be a go-to baking book. So if somebody needs to bake something, they come to our book. It's just always there for them with a recipe ready for the purpose that they need it for. We didn't want it to be just bread or just cakes. There's a lot of those books out there, which is great if you're specializing in that type of thing. But for us, we were quite inspired by books like Oh, She Glows by Angela Liddon, which is an all-round vegan cookbook and one of the first cookbooks I bought in Canada when I went vegan. And she had like the same kind of thing: breakfast, lunch, dinners, snacks, treats, all of that. And I thought, that's a book I just go to like time and time again. It's not going to grow old. So we wanted sort of a classic book like that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Hers is actually one of the first cookbooks I ever bought, and it's still probably one that I use the most. So I couldn't agree with you more. Yep. Yeah. Well, so it sounds very comprehensive, which is incredible. Like you said, it's not just bread. There's so much more to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really curious kind of during this process, how each of you complemented each other as you were creating this cookbook as well, kind of what your roles were.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely led the recipes, the development and the sort of research into them, like testing them out. Natasha, the team, our friends were sort of, always tasting them and making sure that they, we had a mixed review of how they were. We wanted to really like make sure they were tried and tested, not just make it once and then, put it out into the world. We wanted to make it achievable. There's recipes in there for a beginner, intermediate, and recipes that are a bit more advanced, but there's something for everyone there.
We started off just putting in the recipes that the first 50 recipes we came up with were the ones we already had at the bakery. And Penguin asked you to create contents page first and have a sort of skeleton of what the book's going to look like. And so we put those into different chapters and then sort of filled in blanks. Okay, so we're going to have a cookie chapter. So then it was like, let's come up with some more cookies that we can add. And so that's where I sort of was able to assist Ed. I would often come up with ideas as well and feed them to Ed. And for example, like the potato frittata he mentioned earlier, like years ago, a friend had given us a Scottish cookbook, a really old book. It's referenced in our book. It's called like Old Scots Kitchen or something. And there was like a potato scone that they had, but it was really heavy on like cream and stuff. So I remembered this recipe, and I remember eating something like it. I can't remember if it was that exact recipe and something like it when I wasn't vegan, and thinking, oh, they were really good. Ed, could we make this vegan? And then he had the idea of, let's use the sourdough discard. Let's do it in a pan, as a skillet kind of bread, and morphed it into something new. So that was my area to start with, was kind of helping him with coming up with ideas, suggestions. And Ed's phenomenal. If I make something at home that's nice, he will gladly take the concept, and then remake it much better, which is really annoying, but also a compliment. It's the most annoying compliment.
Yeah.
Look at that. And then, doing other research on things, like we wanted to kind of get into the area of gluten. Gluten is such a dirty word these days. Protein is such a positive word. Nobody wants gluten. Everybody wants protein. We thought it's time to pull the veil on this. Gluten is a protein, and go into that, and go into, ancient grains, and talk about their health benefits, fermentation and its benefits. So doing lots of research on that. And then a lot of the work I did was also editing recipes. There's so much back and forth with editors, corrections to be made, conversions, cups and grams and ounces. That was a whole nightmare of what we were going to actually convey. And in the beginning, I wanted to be inclusive, so I put grams, ounces, and cups. And then Penguin said, and I was going through all the recipes doing this. Then Penguin were like, I think this is a bit overwhelming. Can we just sort of fine tune this and stick to one or the other? And so I was like, well, people in the UK are going to use this book. People in Australia are going to use this book. People in random places, Singapore might use this book. I don't know. Like, we want this to be universal. We don't want it to be only for one demographic, So there was a lot of that.
It was definitely a steep learning curve. I think when we took it on, it was like, wow, we knew it was going to be a big project, but I don't think we knew how big it was. So yeah, I think the naivety probably helped us, to be honest, sort of just getting into it. And when we look back now, it's 2.5 years in the making. It's kind of a huge achievement, and we're very proud of it. But we definitely, people are like, oh, so book 2. And we're like, let's just see how this one goes. Hopefully, we sell loads and it gets rave reviews. That's what we hope. It's coming up for Christmas, so a great time for people to be baking and sharing these recipes with friends and family. So fingers crossed.
Yep, absolutely. In the book too, do you kind of talk about some of your tips and tricks when it comes to making sourdough, just because it is, from what I understand, a really complex bread to make?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's so simple: water, flour, salt. So on the outside, I could teach anyone to make a sourdough, and we go through that step by step in the book. But it's just that sort of learning and growing and keeping, the starter consistent and things like that. So we take through people's schedules. If you're just making bread once a week, the maintenance of a sourdough starter, you can keep it in the fridge versus on the counter at room temperature. So it depends how often you want to make bread. I always recommend that people sort of repeat the same recipe, 5 to 10 times, so you can see those subtle differences. Like the country sourdough is our sort of everyday loaf. We sell, it's the most popular bread that we sell at the bakery. It's great for sandwiches and toast. It's a good all-rounder. It's 40% whole grain, so it's got lots of flavour in there, but it's still nice and soft and light. So I always recommend that people make that first. But that's why it was important for us not just to be exclusively sourdough and to intimidate people. They're just sort of like, oh, I've made it before, I had an appreciation, maybe now it's time to come back to it. So that's why we've got other things in there that are more simple to achieve.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I won't ask about future aspirations, because I know right now you're sort of basking in this book being released after 2.5 years of putting time and energy into this, which is always a great reminder that some things take time. I mean, really a lot of what you've done have just taken time, but it's aligned with your values and it's ended up working out, which is so cool
Hmm.
to see.
Hmm.
Is there anything in this cookbook, like a recipe or something that you're really excited about, or one of your favorites that you put in here that the listener can kind of preview before they buy the book?
Yeah, a really good one, which is actually on the Penguin website, is our carrot cake. It's a spiced carrot and walnut cake. So the recipe is actually available. So if people want to try it, they can jump on penguin.com and just search for BReD or Ed Tatton, or even just carrot cake. And the full recipe is available online there that they can try out. There's a few others on Veg News that have been published, so people can sort of test it out, see what they think. But the carrot cake was actually one of the first dairy-free cakes that I ever made, and then I think I've been making it about 15 years, and it's just developed and changed and tweaked the spices. So it's definitely one of our most popular cakes at the bakery. I always sort of people are sort of in and ahhing which to choose, like a chocolate cookie or carrot cake, and I'm like, go for the carrot cake. It's like 50% carrots. Yeah, it's good for your eyesight. Things
There
like
you
that.
go.
So
Yep.
it's a sweet treat, but it's got some vegetables in there. So
There you go. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, carrot cake is so wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
good. Well, where can people, because the book came out November 7th this year, which is so exciting in 2023. Where can people buy the book, or where's the best place for them to find it?
Oh, thank you for asking. We have links to it on our website, edsbred.com, edsbred.com. But anywhere you can buy books should have it available. So in Canada, Chapters Indigo is a big one. Amazon, it's available worldwide. So Amazon.com, if you're in the US, is a great one. But all the major book retailers have it in stock. We've noticed all over the world. On the Penguin website, if you go to penguin.com and search for BReD, BReD, the cookbook, you'll find this great feature where you can type in your zip code and it will tell you your local bookstore that has it or can order it in for you. So that's a really nice feature if you want to support local, which we're all about. So yeah, lots of places.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And then social media wise, where can people connect with you, follow you, get ideas, inspiration, all that great stuff?
Totally. Yeah, we're most active on Instagram. So it's eds_bread, eds_BRED. And yeah, your listeners can feel free to send us little questions if they're not sure about, a recipe, or if they just want to follow along to see. We do tutorials into shaping, or even we welcome ideas, for new content and things like that. So we try and really sort of engage with our followers there.
Oh, that's exciting. Yes. Okay,
Mhm.
wonderful. If you're in the area, oh my goodness, definitely go visit Ed's Bread because it just looks absolutely stunning and delicious. So, yeah. Was there anything behind, actually, I should probably ask this, the BRED spelling in bread?
Yeah, it's just a portmanteau of my name. So it just naturally came up that people were like, in the early days, they were like, oh, have you tried Ed's Bread? And it just sort of seemed to roll off the tongue. And then when we opened the bakery, we wanted to try and move away from Ed's Bread. It's the website, because we couldn't just get bread.com, and it's the Instagram. So most people call it Ed's Bread, but the bakery on the door just says bread. But underneath it still says made by Ed. So it goes under a few sort of variation. Even in customers sometimes be in the shop, they'd be like, hey, I'm at Ed's. So, it's just like Ed's Place or whatever. So yeah, within the community, it has a bunch of different names.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Well, good. Well, Natasha and Ed, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your story with the listeners. I'm thrilled to check out your cookbook, and I know people listening are as well. So thank you again for your time and sharing your stories.
Thanks for having us,
Thank
Ashley.
you, Ashley. It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep thriving.